The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a platform and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co. Michael Neill. Michael Neill is an internationally renowned transformative coach and the best-selling author of 6 books, including Creating the Impossible, The Inside Out Revolution, and The Space Within. His weekly radio show, Living from the Inside Out, has been a listener favorite on Hay House Radio for over a decade. And his TEDx Talk, Why Aren't We Awesomer, has been viewed by over 200,000 people around the world. His weekly blog and podcast, Caffeine For the Soul, is now on its 18th year and still going strong. So I met Michael at the NLP Practitioner with Richard Bandler and Paul McKenna. And from the moment go when I met him, I thought he was an amazing guy. You just cannot, there's no other way than loving Michael. He's just such a great individual. He's good friends with Paul McKenna. I know they've written books together. They've trained together. So I've seen his career grow and evolve. I've seen these books come out, and I just think he's amazing. He's definitely one of the best coaches in the world. And a lot of the things that he teaches in his training course is phenomenal. So it was obviously very important to me to interview Michael, because he's definitely one of the voices that stand out in this clouded and sometimes confusing industry. I hope you enjoy. Thank you so much. Hi, I'm Bernardo Moya from The Best You, and welcome to Inspiring People. Today I'm with Michael Neill. Michael, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Michael is an international speaker, author, and he's the host of his radio show for Hay House. How are you, Michael?
I'm very well, thanks.
How's things?
Well, I'm at the end of a sort of a pre-launch book thing, so I'm really looking forward to getting home. I've had a great time here, and I'm excited about getting the new book into the world. It's exciting. It's like,
it's always exciting, yeah.
19th child, but it's each one is like
brilliant. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you were born, how your early days.
I always sound like I'm sort of English because I was born in Shrewsbury next to Worcester, but it's a different Shrewsbury and a different Worcester, obviously. So near Boston, basically. And my dad was an engineer. He ran a shop that drilled long holes in bits of metal called Honomatic. And it turns out that there's a lot of people who need long holes drilled into bits of metal. So like the legs to the lunar module in space, that was my dad. He designed and built them. The helicopter refueling probes, he was part of the team that invented them and built them. So it was actually kind of cool, even though as a kid it was just noisy machines and shiny. My mom was a organic chemistry professor and then teacher in high school growing up. And so sort of a family of very down-to-earth practical people. Brother went to MIT very young. Sister went to Harvard very young. And I wanted to be an actor, which made them so proud. But I also, and this has nothing to do with them, but I grew up suicidally depressed from about the age of 13. And it got worse and worse. I mean, it wasn't constant, but it became that way. And so I was sort of forced to deal with psychology, which wasn't part of my family's makeup. Now, I was incredibly loved. We were well looked after. So I knew it wasn't circumstances. And so I knew it had to be something up here. And that's what got me interested in the mind, was trying to be okay, trying to survive. And what's been great is seeing that not only did I mean, it worked. I gave away the ending. But also that I found some things that seem to be somewhat universal. So there are always going to be things that help you, that help me, that help somebody else. But for me, it was finding things that not only helped me be okay, but actually have made it much, much better than okay. I've never been happier. I think somewhere along the line, I went from being suicidally depressed to just depressed to a recovering depressive to a high-functioning depressive to a happy person. And I can't draw sharp lines, but I can see the progression. And it's very, very different being here than it was being there.
Tell me about your early years at school. What was that like for you? Did school have an impact in any way negatively to you? Or?
No, oddly, for all I'm saying, I was a fairly, happy-go-lucky kid in terms of school because I was smart, so it wasn't hard for me. And I did theater, which was my little escape. I got to be someone else. And so that was just, it was just fun. We'd do plays, put on little skits. I would write things, and I just, it was for me, it was an escape, and it was girls. I mean, it was also the one place where I stood out, right? Athletically, not so good. But so school for me was I think probably what it is for most kids. It was what you do. You don't think about, should I go to school? Until university, at least. It's just what you do. So it really wasn't until I went to university that even became something that I thought about as having significance in my life.
What did you do at university?
Well, I studied theater, and I became a professional actor, and then that's when I moved to London, as part of the scholarship I got. The great thing about being in theater is you're not supposed to be smart. So while compared to my brother and sister at MIT and Harvard, I might not be quite the brightest one in the family. Compared to a lot of people, I still did well. So they gave me an amazing scholarship that let me go to school for free, essentially, and sent me abroad. And I came over to London because I'd always this is probably a story worth telling. I thought I decided to come to London when I was 19. And I remember turning to my dad, we were at the interval of a play in Boston, and saying, I think I want to go to school in London. He said, well, apply, see what you can do. Well, I did. I moved here when I was 20. And then when I was 25, I got a letter in the mail written to my old home address. And it was a sort of a vaguely familiar handwriting. And I opened it up, and it said, Dear Michael, you're probably living in London. You're probably married, which I was. You probably don't have kids yet. You're probably doing a lot of work at the BBC, which I was. It was a letter from me aged 15 that I'd done for a high school English class, and the teacher had kept it, and 10 years later had mailed it out. Yeah. So obviously at some level I knew then, even though I remember deciding 4 years later than that, which I just think is cool.
Wow, really cool.
Yeah.
So how were those years in England, in London here? What was it like?
It was really interesting because I'd been from Boston to Texas, which is one kind of reality shift. But London was the first time I was out completely on my own. And I remember I arrived in 1987, and it was the year of the hurricane. And I was in a little bed sit, where you put the 50p piece in to get the electricity working. And I saw this storm outside, and I didn't have a radio or anything, and I thought it was the beginning of British winter. I'm looking outside at this hurricane, thinking this is like October and it's going to get bad in December, thinking I'm not going to make it. And I was probably the only person in London relieved when I found out it was a hurricane. So I thought, okay, that was weird. But what was great about it was just really immersing myself in a completely different culture. And I know you've done that too. And you suddenly find out which things are universal and which things are just idiosyncrasies of the culture you grew up in. And that was kind of nice because it popped things where I went, oh, not everyone thinks this way. Not everyone likes this and dislikes this. I was fortunate. I loved, the Clash, Blackadder, the Young Ones. I was about 5 years behind British culture, but I was into British culture. I already drank tea. So, in all those ways, I actually found it quite easy to fit in.
And did you start working here? I mean,
yeah, actually what happened was I met my wife when I was still in school. In fact, in my first year of school. So by the time I finished school, we were married. So I, stayed and worked. And for the first year, I worked essentially teaching NLP. Because, in fact, it wasn't even NLP really then. It was Tony Robbins-y NLP because I hadn't done any formal NLP training yet. And it was just what I'd found that helped me. So there was a place from which I just thought, well, it helped me. Let's see if it helps other people. It does. This is great. Let's do it. But I always felt like I was filling in time till my acting career started. So about a year after I got out of drama school, I got my first acting job. And then I sort of had these two parallel careers really the whole time I was here.
How old were you then, more or less, Mike?
Probably 23. And so my 20s were spent kind of doing both, teaching and first I was doing a sort of a therapy practice, and then that moved into coaching, the kind of work I do now. Around 1994, I got a sitcom up in Wales. So I had sort of steady work as an actor. I did do a lot of BBC radio. And so I had a nice career, and it was really interesting. I always thought the psychology was me filling in, like it was my day job. You know, other people work in a bookshop. Well, I worked in a bookshop for a while. Other people do this and that. I taught. And there was a point, and it wasn't until after I moved to America, where I realized, oh, no. It's the other way around now. Acting's become my day job. This is what I really want to do. And at that point, it all changed.
You say when you started, you were doing a bit of Tony Robbins and all that. So how did you, tell me from then on, your journey as what you are or you become now?
Whatever that is. Well, for me, again, it always followed my development. So I didn't go looking for things to teach. I went looking for things that would make me feel better and do better. So one of the first things that I found, I sort of stumbled into a bunch of spiritual things that did help, but they weren't organized. They weren't like religious or anything where you could kind of go, okay, this is now who I am or what I do. But it calmed me down a bit. And then an old friend played me some Tony Robbins tapes. And I thought, yeah, that's interesting. And then I went, I don't know if you remember Compendium, but it was the old bookshop. And I went in and there was this book, Unlimited Power. And I started reading it. And there was a bit, I don't know, like 3 chapters in where he said something about reach up and turn down the volume knob on the voice inside your head. Okay. Didn't know there was one. And it got quiet. And like, the inside of my head hadn't been quiet since I was 17 years old. And that was shocking to me. And that was the most beautiful feelings that I'd felt, again, since I was a kid. And I thought, I need to learn everything about this. And I did. I went on every course I could. I borrowed money from my brother to fly out to Hawaii to do the course with Tony. And then quite fortunately, I happened to live upstairs from Change's bookshop, which at the time was the psychology bookshop in London. And so I would go downstairs and, you know, read through all the books, and eventually they hired me. So I was there all the time anyways. And so, you know, I got to read Richard Bandler's work. And that was a whole nother thing. Because like when I read Tony's stuff, it really helped me. But I didn't realize there was so much underneath it. And when I read Richard's stuff, I suddenly went, oh, this is something really, you don't have to do this. You know, you can actually just talk to somebody and their life gets better. And I got hooked, totally hooked. And I trained, I became a master practitioner, trainer, master trainer. And again, all on the side. I mean, it's quite funny. There was the life I thought that I was supposed to live. And there was the life I was very quietly living, becoming skilled, working with people, teaching, that I also loved, but I didn't count it. And it's quite interesting that I really did have the goal life and then the real life. And the real life was much, much better. And if I have a regret, it's that I didn't give up on the goals earlier. Because the real life was so organic. I never had to try. I never tried to succeed at NLP particularly. I never tried to succeed in anything that I did on that side of the fence. It was just, oh, here's a person. Can I help them? Oh, that didn't work. Where can I learn what might? And it was so organic and natural. And I've since learned we can all live that way. It's just that we're so busy trying to do it the right way that we don't notice.
And tell me about that training. So did you train? How did you become a master practitioner and then eventually training with Richard?
Well, through no fault of my own. I mean, that's what I mean. It was really just a course would come through my door and I would go, I want to do that. And we'd figure out a way to pay for it and I'd go do it. Because we figured at some level, I kind of knew it would come back. You know, like people look at me now and I charge a lot of money and well, I've earned it. You know, I've been around for 23 years doing it. I've invested. I never actually sat down. I'd be amazed if it wasn't at least $500,000, probably closer to $1 million in my own training. I should be good. If I wasn't good at it by now, something went terribly wrong.
Can't get a refund.
Yeah. Well, I was always going to talk to but so for me, it was really just what's next. I didn't see a map or like, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. So what it meant is that when the inner voice wanted me to go left, I did. So around 1999, I saw a TV show on QED here on the BBC called I Want My Little Boy Back. And it was about a family from Birmingham with an autistic child. And they brought them out to this place in the United States called the Option Institute. And this kid, and he was so dysfunctional. I mean, to get him on the airplane was amazing that they could do this. And they'd saved, I think, for 2 years to be able to go. Well, he's there for 2 weeks. And about a week into the documentary, you see him get up in the middle of the night. They've got like those nighttime cameras and make himself a bowl of scrambled eggs. Now, I know that might sound like this was a kid who couldn't tie his shoes. And I'm watching this thinking either he's faking it or this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. And I literally got on the phone because of the time difference to the United States right after the show aired. And I called. I must have been, I don't know how many people did that, but I must have been one of the first. And I said, I've just seen this documentary, and if what you're doing is real, I want to learn how you do it. And she said, oh, do you have special children? Which I didn't realize is how in America you say autistic or, special needs. And I said, yes, I have 2 of them. And they said, oh, that must be really difficult for you. And I said, no, not particularly. We got through that. And it was 5 days later, I was on a plane to the States. And I was sitting there. And what I saw, and that was, in a way, the beginning of the work that I do now, was I saw that it was possible without any techniques, without any, let me do it to you, which is what I had been trained to do, for people to find those same levels of happiness and resilience and resourcefulness and insight from that side of the chair. And that fascinated me. And I never did really become a practitioner of that work. But what they were able to do with both kids and the parents of those kids just touched me. And I thought, well, I don't know what that is, but I want to do more of that. And that sort of became a big influence in my work through about 2005, 2006, when my first book came out. And that was the combination of NLP and Option was really the basis of my first book, my first 2 books. And it was beautiful. That was a really beautiful time. We moved to the States because I knew to. It was literally one of those moments where it was like, I need to be in LA. And it kind of makes sense backwards, but it made no sense forwards. My career had finally taken off over here. But I just knew. And it's that sort of learning to trust that inner direction that you hear that. I'm sure you hear that interviewing people all the time. There are those moments. What I've now learned in the work that I do now is those moments can happen a lot more often. Back then, that felt like I heard a voice kind of a moment.
I still want to know, how did you, from reading books and being curious about NLP, then started sharing a stage with Paul McKenna and Richard Bandler?
Okay, so there is a sort of a sequence there. I met Paul when he was a radio DJ at Capitol and I was doing voiceovers. And he used to come into the Mystic Trader bookshop where I worked. So we met as a couple of guys. I didn't know who he was, particularly. And we just got on and became friendly and sort of had nothing to do with work. So it was quite funny that I was also very good friends with Michael Breen, who he used to work at Changes. Mm-hmm. And so we'd become good friends. And I always feel bad to this day. I wasn't the one that introduced them. But I was already teaching. And when they started teaching together, I would come in sometimes and do some teaching with them. And then, like I say, around 1999, I'd kind of had it. The world, that was the time when it got really political. And my acting career was going well. And I just retired. I just thought, I'm not up for this. I'll still help people if I can, but it's not fun anymore. And I don't know. I wasn't, maybe I wimped out. Maybe I was smart. But I dropped out. And Paul came over to the States a couple times because he was doing some infomercials. And we met up and he was interested in the coaching that I was doing. And he did a couple of sessions with me and it really, really helped him. Like he was blown away. And he was like, we need to teach this. So he brought me back to London to teach. And we did, what did we call them? It was Coaching Success, I think we called them. We did a couple of big events, just he and I. And he was trying to get me to come back and do the NLP stuff. Because Michael was moving on and, they needed somebody. I didn't want to do it. I kept pushing other people. I would say, have you tried this person? Have you tried this person? And Paul's very persuasive, and he finally convinced me to come over. And I found out later had to do just as much convincing to get Richard to let me, because I hadn't really met Richard, except I introduced Richard. So it was my one experience of Richard. The first time he came and spoke in the UK for Paul, and for whatever reason they asked me to introduce him. I to this day don't know why, but I didn't. I wound up.
You're American.
I know, and I wound up telling light bulb jokes as part of his introduction. And I remember, I think it really did go down like this. You know, the payoff one was, you know, how many mice does it take to screw in a light bulb? And the answer is 2, but don't ask me how they got in there. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Richard Bandler. So I think it was probably the strangest introduction he's ever gotten. But that was, you know, we didn't know each other. I was in awe of him. Yeah. I'd learned a ton from him through books and audios, but I didn't really know him. So there was a sense of, you know, being brought to meet the Godfather.
If you're interested in working with me, contributing to the magazine, maybe speaking at any of our many events around the world, partnering or licensing The Best You, go to www.thebestyou.co.
You know, one of the things that I so respect about Richard is after all this time, you know when he won me over, actually? You know, not that it was his job to, but when I kind of decided, oh, you're all right. I walked into the sort of green room for the trainers, and he was signing certificates. Now, we'd have like 500-600 people on those trainings.
Yeah.
And I said to him, and I didn't mean to be rude, I said to him, you sign your own certificates? And he looked at me like, you know, like he can, and said, I don't just sign them, I love them. and you know, he was talking about, he literally puts energy into each signature, and I could see that. And I went, oh, well, you've been doing this 30 years. Oh, that's really cool. And so that's when I decided, politics be damned. If I can do this, I'm going to do this. And we had a great run. I mean, that was an amazing, amazing time. And, you know, we overlapped a little bit there. And then
I trained with you.
Oh, okay.
I trained
didn't
with
even
you.
know that.
Yeah, I trained with you and Richard and Paul, my first practitioner.
Yeah.
Day, still anchored.
But it was great. I mean, they were absolutely great. And then it was just, you know, when it came time to change, it was time to change. And in a way, it was easy because my work had already begun to move away from NLP. So I was had gotten to the point where I was coming back and doing NLP to teach, but it wasn't really what I did in practice. And so it was kind of a natural transition.
No, it's just another tool in your kit.
Oh, absolutely. God, I wouldn't be where I was without it. I've got all the time in the world.
No, but one of the things I've always admired you, Michael, is that over the years is that I've seen how you have kept evolving and how you become who you are now, which is kind of considered one of the best coaches in the world. Yeah. Is thanks to that, is how much you've continued to learn. So tell me, tell me about your journey from then onwards.
I didn't know I was still on one. Like at that time, it's like, everything's great. This is great. Happily married, great kids, lots of money, good job. And, you know, Nina and I would have what I called our annual fight. So like we've been together, I mean, we're 25 years now, so I don't know what it would have been then, but a long time. But every now and again, we'd get into it about something because we're human. And a friend gave me a book to read called The Relationship Handbook. And I hate relationship books as a rule. Like, I think they're great if you wrote them, but I don't know how well they work for other people. But I read it, and I really liked it. There was nothing in it where I thought, oh, but there was a lot of things in it where I went, you know, that's it. I've never thought about it like that before. I read it on a Monday. On the Friday, the friend who loaned it to me said, what did you think? And I said, oh, it was great. He said, how are things with Nina? I said, great. He said, what about the fight? I said, what fight? He said, you guys were really arguing about, were we? I just got Bernardo 2.5, 3 minutes. I couldn't remember. And then when I did, and that would have been one thing. We can do that with hypnosis, right?
Yeah.
But when I did remember, it still didn't seem like a big deal. And then when I talked to Nina about it, it still didn't seem like a big deal. Yeah, there was something we had to resolve. We resolved it. But it wasn't what I thought it was, like a big conflict. And so same thing as when I turned down the volume, I was like, oh, that's weird. I need to learn more about this. And I did the same thing. Now, there wasn't much resource then. But I called everyone I could. I mean, literally you had to write letters to people. I don't know if you remember, you used to do that, you know, to reach them, and anyone who would talk to me, I went up, I had them work with me. And I had a great moment in 2007 where Paul was very excited about this. He and I were talking about it because he could see that something was shifting in me. And he said, go find out what they do. Because they kept saying, well, no, we don't really do anything. And we're like, oh, yeah, you do. You just don't know. So I went up to work with a couple of people, George Pransky, Dr. Keith Blevins, who sort of helped found the field. And I sat with them, and they didn't seem to be doing anything. No, nothing seemed to be happening either, so I wasn't that impressed yet. Well, the second night I was up there, I was watching a DVD of Sid Banks, who's a Scottish welder who got enlightened and was sort of the philosopher behind what I do. And he just said something so simple that I'd heard before. But he said, every human being has innate mental health. And I was drinking a beer while he said it, and I, like out the nose. I don't know why, but I heard him. I got that was true even about me. And that was that moment I talked about at the beginning where I went, oh, I've spent all this time trying to not be depressed. And my second book, I was literally 10 days away from going out on tour to promote it, which was all about how to do stuff to handle your depression. And I suddenly saw beyond a shadow of a doubt, I was born happy. We were all, no, babies don't need therapy. We learn to be unhappy. And the truth is, the second we stop thinking the way that we've learned to think, we're right back to the default. That was both the best news I had ever had, because it meant I wasn't damaged and didn't need fixing. It was more like waking up from a dream. Like even if you have a nightmare, you don't have to go back after you wake up and fix what happened in it. I just woke up. And it was terrible because I was about to be on a book tour promoting something that I could now see was fundamentally incorrect. So I got through that. But I was never the same and my work was never the same because I could never look at somebody and see them as broken anymore. And I'd paid lip service to that. I mean, I'd said, oh yeah, you're not broken, you just have bad programming. But I hadn't seen how fundamental it was in me that I was broken and how fundamental it is in so many of us that, well, yeah, we can become higher and higher functioning, but underneath it all, it's still pretty turmoil, still pretty messed up. And I don't have a better word for it than blessing and grace. It was a blessing. It was grace to have that taken away from me, to see that wasn't real. And what was beautiful about it was because it didn't come through a particular religious practice, I was able to talk to anyone about it. You know, I didn't have to say, join this religion and then it will be taken off you. Because obviously we've heard stories like that. It was just through a deeper understanding of the mind. And I've just been committed to that work ever since. And the new book, The Inside Out Revolution, that's my first real attempt at going full out. Like Super Coach, I talked about what I'd learned from it in a way. In this book, I've just shared what it is I saw. And I hope, I know actually, because it's already happening, that other people will get to have that same experience.
When you, talking about Super Coach, when you've worked with many, many people, what would you say your job is as a coach when somebody comes to see you and says, what is it you do?
Well, I'll give you the secret answer, which won't be a secret anymore, which is I think I'm there to wake them up to their soul, to wake them up to the power inside them, to that intelligence and energy in life that we're all a part of, that we cut off from and then try and empower ourselves. So we try and find this power, this willpower, and make ourselves succeed and be happy and do things, when actually we're hooked up to this much, much greater power that everyone's got access to. It doesn't matter what your religion or no religion. I mean, I've had this chat with Jehovah's Witnesses and atheists. Everyone gets it at some level. Nobody really thinks they're in charge. But boy, do we act like we are. And the analogy that I'll often use is trying to do things the way we're taught to do them the empowered way. It's like having a sailboat and thinking, okay, let me work on my lung power. And I'm going to blow this sailboat. And if I do it hard enough, it'll move. And sometimes I'll catch a current and it can move quite quickly. And I think, look what I did. But sailboats aren't designed to run that way. Sailboats are designed to catch the wind. And that creative force, that wind, that power of mind that all of us have, if we let it, if we get that it's there, we see what's in the way, it will take us places. And so with my clients, I'm trying to connect them back up with that, because once they've got that connection and they understand why they lose it when they lose it, because we all lose it, right? None of us live there 24/7. But if you know why you lose it when you lose it, you don't lose it for long. And their lives take off. And so it doesn't matter what they do. You know, I often use the analogy of Bill Gates. Bill Gates had amnesia and came to you for business coaching. Mm-hmm. Are you going to share your 7 strategies for success? Or are you going to try and wake him up to the fact that he's Bill Gates, knowing that once he wakes up to that, he's going to be able to take care of his own life? Well, it's the same thing. We all have access to that kind of wisdom, that kind of genius. But we don't know it's there a lot of the time. Or we suspect it's there, but we don't think we can have it because we're not worthy, we haven't worked hard enough, we haven't done this. Or we don't understand why we're not getting it. And so we look in the wrong direction to fix what isn't broken. And so we don't get to live that way. It's available to anyone. And it just so happens, if you're already high achieving and you find it, you can make a much more obviously dramatic shift in the world. If you haven't done much and you find it, you're on your way. It might take longer to show up in the eyes of the world, but you get the benefits of it immediately.
Lovely. Fascinating. So we'll talk about your latest book a bit later on. So what's your life like now? Because you seem to have kind of the perfect balance. Family.
Well, it's puppy dogs. I mean, it is puppy dogs at the moment. We just got a new English teddy bear, golden doodle. Yeah. Just the cutest dog on the planet named Sergeant Pepper. And so that is kind of what our life is right now. Well, now it really is a case of, I sort of figured out early on, I did an exercise called the happy deathbed. I don't know if I ever did that with you guys. But you imagine that you're on your deathbed and you're really, really happy. Why? And what I saw immediately when I did that is because I was there with my kids when they grew up. And so I don't say everyone has to do that, but for me, what's made my life great is I've been there with my kids. I've missed one school play in 18 years, 3 kids. And that was only because they changed the dates of it at the last minute. I love that being the center of my life. I love Nina being at the center of my life and our relationship being at the center. And I love how patient she is because I get caught up just like anybody else. I have to travel to do things like this and to do my work. But basically, I have a bit of a jammy life. My first 3 hours of the morning are generally just, I call them the creativity factory. And I'll usually go down to the office and I'll do something. And I might write, I might read my email, I might watch TV. It's just, I know that in that space, good ideas come. That's where the next great idea comes, from empty space. I'll see clients from 10 to 1 usually. And then in the afternoon, I either write if I've got a book going or I hang out with the kids. And then I do something like this, where you can probably hear, I kind of run myself down a little because I come out for 2 weeks, I leave home, and I work 24 hours a day. I take every interview that's offered to me. I speak anywhere that will have me. I see clients. So I figure if I'm going to be away from home, I'm going to really make full use of it. So it's funny, people say, well, you work hard. How can you write a program called Effortless Success? Well, yeah, I work hard when there's work to be done. But the truth is a lot of times there isn't anything more to be done because I'm just waiting for the wind. And so I get to rest a lot. And for me, it's not a perfect balance. In fact, I often think my life must be boring to my clients. Because they go out and they're on television all the time and they're doing all this. But it works for me. It's just right for me. And it's ever evolving.
Yeah, and especially you enjoy what you're doing, it's not work, is it?
Well, that's the thing. It's been a while since I've taken a job. Well, I better take this one. I actually had a client who, she's in the music industry, and she said that she realized that there was something out of balance when her daughter came to her 5-year-old daughter and said, "Let's play mummies and daughters." She said, "Okay." And her daughter said, "I'll be the mummy." And she picked up her mummy's purse and said, "I've got to go now, honey, bye." And the daughter was just, there was no malice in it. But she went, "Oh my goodness, what am I doing?"
Yeah. Brilliant. I just want to run through a few things. We've discussed about learning and how important learning is, and how our life is a continual journey of learning. What's your thoughts regarding learning?
Well, I think learning is the best thing since sliced bread, and we really have to stop ourselves from doing it. Like, I think if your goal in anything that you do is to have a learning curve, you're going to succeed at anything that you do. And the fact is, if you have a learning curve, you're going to get good at things. And if you get good at things, you're going to succeed in anything that you do. And we put the emphasis in the wrong place. We try and get success. If you go in to learn, you'll learn. If you want to succeed, you might sometimes, you won't sometimes. Rules of the game. No exceptions. So for me, seeing that, if I don't know how to do something, it's not a problem. I'm not going to pretend I do, but I'm going to learn. If I'm doing something for the first time, I'm probably going to fail, but that's okay. Of course I am. Why wouldn't I? And so because I know that, I'm not scared to try things. I do, people go, "Wow, everything you do works." Well, no, it doesn't. I just do a lot of stuff, and the stuff that doesn't work, I cut my losses early. And I'm learning as best I can from everything that I do. That never ends. I've met people who are at the absolute top of their field. They're some of the biggest learning monsters I ever meet. Richard doesn't go anywhere without learning something new. Being around people like that is a treat. Some of the really high level executives, they're continually looking for new insights, and they don't always look out there. Sometimes they get quiet, a lot of times actually. And they'll either meditate or have some practice. They go walk, they take a month off. And they come back with a whole new set of ideas to take over the world. When you start to see that's how it works, there's a study into insight. Because the way I talk about learning now is very often I use the word insight, a sight from within. That the learning that sticks is the learning that you get the way you get a joke. So you can understand a joke or you can get a joke. You can understand something or you can get it. And insight is when you get it. Oh, I get it. Like there's a moment in NLP for anyone who sticks with it where they go, "Oh, I get it." Well, when you get that that's the goal, insight, because that's what's going to take you to the next level, it starts getting really interesting. Well, where does insight come from? Well, there was a study they did in the States, and I don't remember this quite right, so forgive me if it's not quite accurate. But basically, the number one place where people got insight was in the shower. Now, it's not because the shower has magical properties. It's because it's the one place where most people let themselves switch off. They let their mind wander. They let go of life for a little while. And when you do that, there's space for something new to come in. Well, a friend of mine was giving a talk, sharing this data. I forget, I think number 2 was walks in nature, and number 3 was maybe driving. And he shares this data, and somebody comes up to him afterwards with a notebook and goes, "So how long should I have my people shower?" Right? And that's how up in our heads we are.
She didn't get it.
Yeah, she didn't get it. Is we think it's something we have to do, learning. Learning is what happens when we don't get in the way. Off my soapbox.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That is really good. And one of the things, a lot of the stuff that we put together is obviously to share, because people like yourselves have great content, and you're permanently sharing and giving away content and tips and ideas. And with technology nowadays, it's all available everywhere, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so people should really take advantage of how we've moved
on. Well, even in I said when I first came across this field, the 3 principles seems to have become what it's called. I tend to call it the inside out understanding, but there is now, 6 years on from when I first came across, websites with hundreds of videos like this with people talking about it. There's now, I think, a dozen books, including mine. So there's an explosion and not just in this field, of new information being made available. And again, yeah, you've got to navigate. It's all information isn't created equal, but you get a feel for it. If you don't go in, and I would always say this to anyone in any field, don't go in thinking they know and you don't. Go in thinking they may know something you don't know, but you know what it feels like when you're on track. You know what it feels like when something's worth listening to and what it feels like when someone's selling you something. Listen to that, trust that. That'll help you navigate it all because there is great stuff out there.
If you're interested in watching the video content of this interview and many others, or interested in learning from world leaders and teachers, go to www.thebestyou.online. As far as kids coming out of schools, universities, the economy is slightly challenging all over the world. What do you think the best assets are? What should people focus on? What should they do?
Well, it's a great question. I've been asked that one. Honestly, the best asset anyone could have coming out of school or even at any stage is to recognize, A, there is an absolute foolproof way to navigate through life. That if you learn that inner guidance system, it will take you places way beyond what you could create with a goal list. It will guide you step by step like a GPS. Knowing that is incredibly powerful because that means that you come out into the world trusting yourself. And that's powerful. The other is recognizing that the next great idea isn't out there. It's somewhere, I don't even know if it's in here, it's before thought. It's in the unknown. It's going to come at you out of a clear blue sky. It's going to come into your head when there's nothing else much on your mind. And if you recognize those two things, I can trust this inner guidance system, and the next idea that's going to change the world is going to come through me, not from out there, and not from something I've already learned, although it might connect the dots, then you're really free to just go out and enjoy your life, follow your nose, and you will, I promise you, create not only a life of value in the world, but a life that you love. And I mean, this is what I say, if you really get that we can live an inner-directed life, then you might wind up having a wonderful life and driving a Porsche. You might wind up having a wonderful life and driving a bicycle. Either way, you get to have a wonderful life. And that takes the pressure off.
It's lovely. Who inspires you now, Michael?
Who inspires me now? There's a lot of people who inspire me. I've been doing an amazing interview series for Hay House. It's going to be coming out in June of 2013 called The World Summit. And they've let me interview Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote The Four Agreements, who I don't think I've ever met somebody so filled with love. Neil Donald Walsh, who wrote Conversations with God, absolutely fascinating. Jack Canfield, one of the great American success gurus, who I went in prepared to, I had a lot of thinking in my head about him. I thought he was great. I was so impressed with him. I talked to Dr. Joe Dispenza for the interview series last night, who did a study of spontaneous remission and has begun to be able to scientifically replicate spontaneous remission. There's a lot of people who inspire me right now, and I love moving in a world where I get the chance to hang out with some of them. And again, it's, who inspires you? I mean, by all means, check out the people who inspire me. I would say that to anybody. But follow that, trust that. There's a reason they inspire you. Go learn from them. And being one of the people that I know some people are inspired by, we love that. We love not, I do my radio show. I've been doing it for over 7 years. People listen around the world, but it feels like I'm talking to myself.
Yeah, tell me about your radio show.
Well, so I started doing a show back in, I think, about 2005, around the time I was writing my first book. And it started out as an interview series because I didn't think I had anything to say. A little hint there for you, Bernardo. And then when I went with Hay House, they asked me would I host a call-in show. And it turned out that format was brilliant for me. It was made for me. That I do so much better when I don't have time to prepare, because I don't start thinking I'm supposed to be brilliant, and I can just be with whoever's there on the air. And the show went from, even though I was the least famous person on the air, it became the third highest rated show after Wayne Dyer and I think it was Sylvia Browne, the psychic, was the other big name they had. And we've just kept doing it, and we flirted briefly with syndication and making it a 3-hour a day, every day thing when Dr. Laura went off the air. And I looked at the amount of work it would involve and what it would take me away from. And it was uncertain. I mean, if it had been a solid proposition, I might have been more willing. And I decided I wasn't ready for that. But I suspect I'm heading in that kind of a direction. Because honestly, there's no other format that I know where anyone can talk to me. And I don't have to make decisions financially because I'm already being paid. So I can just full attention to whoever's in front of me. That's what I love about live events as well. Once you're in, I don't have to discriminate. And the only reason I do with private clients is because I don't have that much time. And if I didn't charge what I charged, I couldn't live how I live. But I love that I have books out now. I love that I have a radio show. I love that I do free talks. I love that you ask me to do things like this, because anyone should have access to this. And yeah, of course, if you can pay more, you'll get more personal attention. That's true in anything. You know, I had somebody who once, it wasn't actually even me, it was my coach. My coach charged double what I charged, so I was like, and somebody came to him and said, well, you should give me free coaching. And he said, okay. He said, on one condition. I said, well, what is it? He said, go down to the Lexus dealer and tell them that they should give you a free car. Take it to the grocery store and convince them that they should give you free groceries, and then come to me for free coaching. And I understood that. It didn't sound cynical to me. A lot of people in this field are incredibly sincere in our desire to help. And we do everything we can to make this available to everybody. And we're grateful to people like you with the magazine, with something like this, that helps us do that. And, you know, you wouldn't complain if we worked in Blockbuster Video. We also, you know, have families, and we do what we do. And I feel like maybe I'm being unnecessarily defensive, but I love what I do. I want everyone to get it. And I hope they do. I really do.
I think it's down to basically, I mean, you know what you do to make a difference. I know what I do to make a difference. And I would ask other people, what are they doing? Yeah. And because we get the same, you know, well, you charge for seminars or you charge for this.
We used to get it. I think, you know what it is? I used to get it back when I worked in a bookshop. People would come in and put a curse on the Mystic Trader bookshop because we charged $4.99 for a You Can Heal Your Life or whatever it was back then. And I used to think, I don't get it. I don't get that. And now I kind of do. It's just fearful thinking. It's insecure thinking. I so want this, and I could never get this. And actually, Don Miguel Ruiz had a beautiful one. He talked about, he said, imagine we live in a world where everybody has a terrible skin disease. And they have open sores all over their body. And it hurts. And if you even walk by them too fast, the breeze will cause pain. And the person doesn't get that that's why they hurt. And they see you walk past and they hurt, and so they attack you. It's innocent. It really is. As those wounds start to heal, they won't be so sensitive to that. And they'll begin to see the world more rightly. Well, emotionally, that's all of us. We walk around with these gaping open wounds, and we think other people are hurting us. Well, they kind of are, because they're brushing up against us. But if we didn't have the wound, it wouldn't hurt. And I think there's something really powerful in being able to see, oh gosh, okay, this hurts because of my thinking. But the great news is my thinking can change. I don't have to think what I thought yesterday. And as soon as it does, it's a whole different life. It's a whole new way of being in the world. And that's freedom. And that's hope.
Lovely. You didn't mention, how does somebody come to listen to your radio?
Oh, heyhouseradio.com. We're on every Thursday at 8 p.m. in the UK, noon Pacific. And if you go to my site or their site, I don't know what they charge right now, but for a relatively small fee, you can download like 400 episodes. And there are people at seminars, it's become the thing that people know me for now. And they come up and they go, I go to work with you every morning. You come for a run with me on my iPod every day. One woman, you come to bed with me every night. But, it's available.
Yeah, brilliant. Michael, so what's next?
Well, every time I've written a new book, it's always felt to me like I'm heading towards a curtain. So I'm in a room, I'm heading towards a curtain, and on the other side of the curtain is something. And I don't know if it'll be a cliff, an elevator, a palace, or a puppy. Like, I have no idea. I know every time a new book goes out into the world, something shifts. So for me, what's next? I'm very excited. We're doing an event in September. It's a woman named Shaw Wasmond, who's one of the leading entrepreneur coaches here. And her book, Stop Talking, Start Doing, has been #1 for like a year and a half at Smith's. And she and I are going to do a day called Stop Talking, Start Earning, where we're going to share sort of the blend of our philosophies about effortless business success. I've got a new academy. I train coaches. So for 3 years, I trained coaches from 28 countries in doing the work that I do. We took a year off. We're coming back in 2014. We're going to do more of that. I don't know beyond that. And I love not knowing. Mm. I love the fact that I've got open space. And because what I find is when I put up the sails and I've got open space to sail into, the wind comes and it takes me somewhere beautiful. And that, I'm hearing myself say this, and go, okay. But it's kind of true.
No, it is. It is. I know it is because I've seen it over the years. Yeah. What tips, would you give people that actually, talking about business, would want to go into business? What's your thoughts? Because it can be easy, it can be difficult. What's your thoughts?
The two things that come to mind, I think the first thing is your success in business is going to largely come down to your relationship with money. Because if money is what gets you out of bed in the morning and keeps you up at night, that's going to drive your business decisions. And we don't make our best business decisions from insecure thinking about money. And that's true at every level. It's true about if I'm just looking for a job, I'm going to take the wrong job, or I'm liable to take the wrong job if I'm following my fear. If I'm running a company, I'm going to take it in the wrong direction, and I'm going to make bad decisions because I'm making them out of this fear and insecure thinking about money. So the first thing I would do with anyone who wants to go into business or is in business is really take a fresh look at your relationship with money and really clean it up as best we can. The second thing is go in to learn and enjoy people. Learn about business, enjoy people. Because every business can be learned, and every business involves people. Whether it's directly or indirectly, somebody has to pay. And somebody's going to be a person. You might say, no, they're a corporation. Well, no, they're not a corporation. They're a guy or a girl at a corporation. And again, the wonderful thing about that is, well, learning's fun. And when you get comfortable with them, people are fun. And you can thrive in any business just with those three things.
What makes a leader?
I'm sure somebody else has said this better, but I've always thought what makes a leader is people following you. Like, I don't think you can declare yourself a leader and have it be meaningful. I am a leader. Where are you going? Don't know. Who's following? No one. Good for you. Right? For me, turn around, see who's following you. Yeah. Like, I'm a leader. Mm-hmm. I never set out to be a leader. Sometimes I get insecure about the idea that I'm a leader. Mm-hmm. I know I'm a leader because thousands of people follow me. Mm-hmm. Right? And I'm trying to take them somewhere beautiful, which is home, which is back to themselves, back to their true nature. I work with business people who are true leaders because people follow them, because they have a vision of where they want to go. Or if they don't have a vision, because they don't always, they have an incredible trust in that inner compass. And people just know, yeah, I don't know where you're going, but I want to go there with you. So I think it's your clarity of vision or your connection to that inner guidance that makes it likely that people will follow you and that therefore makes you a leader.
That makes a lot of sense. I assume, you obviously read a lot. What because loads of people read different kinds of things. What do you read? What do you tend to read?
It's funny because I was the ultimate self-help NLP psychology reader back in the day. I would read at least 3 self-help books. I would maybe read 1 fiction book a year. And when I had my burden lifted, like when I suddenly saw, oh, I don't have to think that. I don't have to be that guy. I started reading a lot of detective novels. I've gone through all the Robert Parker novels, all the Vince Flynn, all the Jack Reacher. I love all that. So I tend to read actually 1 or 2 fiction books a week. And I'll read a psychology book or a self-help book or a business book that catches my eye. But not with intent. That's what's changed. And actually, it's interesting. When you read without intent, you often pick up more. So I don't read it, maybe this will help me with my problem. I just read it, and suddenly something helps me with a problem. So it's I mean, if there was like a rule of thumb that I found, it's the less I have on my mind, the better things work. Which for a kid who grew up with a family of scientists is a heck of a long way to have come.
Definitely. And Michael, just tell me about your book Inside Out, The Inside Revolution.
Well, The Inside Out Revolution was, I got to a point about 9 months ago where I recognized that my work had gone to another level and my life had gone to another level because people were experiencing miracles, for lack of a better word. People were writing me and saying, I watched this video and I'm not suicidal anymore. I listened to this talk and I'm not going to divorce my partner anymore. I gave my kid, your program, and they asked to listen to it again, and they're doing better in school. And it was like, of course, I've gotten some of that before, but it always felt like an anomaly. Like most people get a bit better, and you get the odd miracle. And I noticed, actually, most people were getting the miracles, and a few people got a bit better. And so I thought, okay, I want to articulate this both for people so that more people can access it, because a book is usually the most people will find you through, but also to articulate it for myself, because if you'd asked me then, if you'd interviewed me 9 months ago, I wouldn't have been as articulate about it. Same things would have been true. I might not have been able to talk about them clearly. And so for me, I knew part of the process of writing a book is you have to be articulate if you're going to put it into words. You can't just say, well, it's kind of a feeling. And so it was great for me. It really helped me understand what I do at a deeper level and where it comes from and what's really going on at a deeper level. And I'm incredibly grateful to my mentors who read the book and went and pushed me and said, well, look, this isn't clear yet. Somebody could read this into this. Somebody could think you mean this. And really pushed me to be drawing a pretty deep line in the sand. That inside out is when you understand that you're living in the feeling of your thinking. That there is not a single experience we can have as human beings that comes from outside us. And outside in is anything else. If I think even a little bit of my experience comes from having a stressful job, that even a little bit of my unhappiness comes from the way my partner treats me or the way my kids are with me, that even a little bit of my stuckness comes from the economy. I'm stuck because the world doesn't work that way. And if I try to get an inner experience from the outside world, I can work forever and it won't happen. Like the old joke about the guy who goes out looking for his keys. And he's looking for his keys outside under the street light, and neighbors come out, and finally the whole neighborhood's there with him. Can't find him. Finally, a little girl goes, well, where did you last see your keys? He said, oh, in my kitchen. She says, well, why are we out here? Well, the light's not working in there. Right? We go out into the world and we look for happiness and we look for success and we look for gratification. We look for fulfillment. We look for that sense of purpose. It's not out there. It never was. It's in you. And when you start looking there, it's amazing that you find it.
Thank you, Michael. My last question. Okay. What would you like your legacy to be?
What would I like my legacy to be? A happy wife, happy kids, and a happy planet. That'll do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for watching Inspiring People. Michael, thank you. That was great. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.